Maybach music.
Can anybody out there hear me? Hear me?
The devil is going on right here. I'm not talking about the viewer who says they saw an eagle. I'm talking about the warped faces all around the main dude right behind me. And I gotta show you something else in a second too. Look at this face. What is going on with this? Something is not right in this room. You can literally see it. You can even feel it. We've seen this before in likewise places. Reminds me an awful lot of what I'm about to show you in a second. And yeah, remember, he puts his glasses on, he can see him, he takes them off, he can't see him, they live, you know, they. This right here. In this, we see people completely, literally morphed from what they were before. This is a real video of a real hearing. And these people come out looking like this. I don't think it's a coincidence, you guys, right on, like straight up on the news. And something even creepier than that got brought to my attention. On Twitter, people were noticing her hand under the Bible. I do a lot with photography, with video, with editing. That is not some glitch. It's not some pixelated glitch. That is also not a shadow, because that's not how a shadow would appear. And also, yes, it's a real picture. It's the main photo. It almost looks like ink. Look at the bleed off on her finger. That's not a shadow. And the lighting they would have in there is immense. And then look at the wrist being fully bright under the Bible. I don't know. What do y'all think it is? Let me know below.
To be the firmament inside the Tmrws egg, okay? The sky that runs across, okay? So it's almost like a dome, okay? So we're sealed off from these realms above. And I'll explain all that in a second, right? So when we're looking at it from underneath, when we're sat on the earth, we're seeing all the constellations revolving above us, okay? So pretty straightforward, really. So that's the firmament, okay? So this firmament, on its axis, right, is revolving, okay? There's motion, everything's moving above us, but the terra firma we're standing on is obviously not moving, okay? So this axis is revolving, it's turning the firmament with all the stars and the constellations and everything else. In turn, it's also affecting the motions of these toroidal fields that are spinning around us, like we discussed earlier on. Those toroidal fields are also carrying the suns and moons around, which is causing our days and nights and seasons and times, okay? And that in turn, that motion is also creating our weather, our winds, our currents, flows, air streams, everything else. So it's one big system working together. It's a network, starting from the cosmic vortex.
That is Stonehenge. It's very cool. But what it actually does is going to blow your mind. I learned that this was a seasonal clock, and it is, but you have to look at it from a different lens. This is what sound looks like going through water. This is Stonehenge. It is built on top of an aquifer. So, who else builds their things on top of water? Well, I showed you in the last video that pretty much everybody builds their best stuff on top of water, even Tesla. Light goes through it. Light can melt the hardest things on the planet when focused, and when used for communication, it's the fastest way to do that. It looks like a pattern of sound. Sound travels fastest through solids and can destroy cities if it's a big enough wave. Sound is a bigger wave than light. Sound can move mediums it passes through, like water, and bend the light. That's how we get cymatic images. You can see this in the twinkling of stars as well. Our technology sends ones and zeros through light. Let's pretend everything around us is made of a very unique vibration that can be expressed in a frequency.
Hello?
Hey, no, I'm okay.
You okay?
Yeah, no, I was just
Alright.
set my purse on fire because it's cold.
I'm a chicken farmer, and they are bullshitting you about the reasons why your eggs are so expensive. Listen, when you consider the fact that we consume over 9
Please do tell them they ass. I want to know why the eggs is $19.99. Like, you know what I'm saying? I'm just joking, but they are high though. Let me know in the comments down below how much, what state you in, and how much 12 eggs are. How much is a dozen of eggs? How much does it cost in your area?
billion chickens a year, and just in meat alone, there's over in 2023 we had over 382 million egg laying hens in this country alone, and so far we've only lost 300 million birds worldwide. It doesn't make sense. They say the same shit every year. I know it because I'm a chicken farmer. I see the same alerts and I see the same opportunities to jack up prices, and yet I choose not to. Listen, when you look at these large facilities, a lot of these birds aren't dying of bird flu. They are dying of neglect. They don't give the freaking vitamins, oregano, all the supplements they are supposed to be getting. They're getting in these mega facilities, and these birds are dying of disease and neglect. And every time a bird dies, they say bird flu. I'm telling you, they're bullshitting you.
How many African slaves were transported to Brazil and Mexico during the transatlantic slave trade? Approximately 4.25 million African slaves were shipped to Brazil and Mexico. How many trips were made to transport these slaves? It's estimated that around 43,750 trips were made. How long did each trip typically take? Each one-way trip took about 2 months. Can you break down the collective travel time for all of these trips? Sure. If we consider each trip taking 2 months, the total travel time would be around 80,000 months, which is equivalent to about 6,666 years of collective time. For a round trip, each journey would be about 12,000 years. How many boats would be needed to make these trips? If we assume each trip required its own boat, then approximately 40,000 boats would have been needed. How long would it take to build these boats? If it took 3 to 5 years to build a single large cargo ship, then it would have taken an incredibly long time to construct 40,000 boats. Even with an average build time of 3 years per ship, it would take 120,000 years to build them all. Even if it only took 1 year to build a ship, it would take about 40,000 years of construction.
Yaki, I thought you were awakened. Why are you taking scriptures literal that were meant to be metaphor, parable, analogy, hyperbole, simile, etc.? The tree of life is your spine. The Garden of Eden is your head. We were kicked out of the garden because, as within, so without, the oil starts in your brain, goes through the neck, leaves the head, leaves the Garden of Eden, and it goes to the tree of knowledge of good and evil, which is down here. We all know that your trachea, your throat, splits into 2 bronchi. Then those bronchi split into bronchioles. Bronchioles become capillaries. So from here, the tree, the trachea, it splits and branches off and becomes a tree of good and evil. You have a devil here and an angel here, but here is just God. Eden is the Macedonian word for one. Odin is the Norse mythological god. Odin is one in Russian. So Eden and Odin mean one. See, Odin has one eye because he represents oneness, which is basically non-duality. You can call it spirit, but it's source. It's basically love. It's the heart chakra. It spells ether. Earth or all matter comes from the ether. Earth is also a theater. This is why we have a single eye at the top of the pyramid on the back of a dollar bill. It represents pure information, omniscience, omnipresence, and omnipotence, which is all-knowing, all places, and all-powerful. This is pure information because it doesn't have a form. This is interdimensional, and it's called counter space because it doesn't take up any space. It's the non-Cartesian nexus from which all things come from and return to. Thank you, Ken Willer. It's the dielectric field from which magnetism and electricity become manifest. So the Garden of Eden is the garden of oneness, and we split into 2. But the point is, 1 meaning pure positive, 2 meaning positive and negative, which is a state of matter. As without, as within, and as above and so below. We start off as light, and that light becomes matter, which is positive and negative, because all atoms are polarized with the north and south pole. The oil starts at your head, goes down to the root, and is supposed to come back up. That's why we're all supposed to go back to the garden. Well, there is a cherubim with a flaming sword swinging in all directions, guarding the Garden of Eden. That is a magnetic field, a flaming sword in all directions. It's a metaphor. It's a magnetic field, an aura, produced by the 2 hemispheres of the brain when they come together, hemisync. That's why it's called a cherubim holding the sword, because the cherubim that is guarding Eden is the 2 cerebrum. The 2 cerebrum hemispheres of the brain are guarding your pineal gland, which is why in the Bible it says Jacob climbed the ladder and he said, I shall call this place Peniel, for I have seen God face to face and I have lived. My life has been preserved. It's literature, not to be taken literally. The Elohim, El means God, but it's also the name of Saturn. Saturn is God. Saturn's called Kronos, and in the Old Testament, where Jesus wasn't mentioned at all until the New Testament, the Old Testament talks about God, Yahweh, and there's a book called the Book of Chronicles. That's because Saturn, Yahweh, is Kronos. Jesus doesn't pop up until the New Testament, which is Kronos' child, who is Zeus, Jesus. Now check this out. The Elohim is all of these gods. When the Bible says that the Elohim made us, it's not these literal gods that made us. The 7 planets are the 7 gods. Your 7 days of the week. Sunday's the sun, Monday's the moon. Martes is Mars, which is Tuesday. Miércoles is Mercury. Viernes is Venus. Jueves is Jupiter, Thursday. And Sábado is Saturn, which is Saturday. 7 days of the week, 7 planets, 7 gods. So those are within you. Those are the 7 chakras. Yes, we are made in God's image. And who are the gods? The 7 planets. Remember what Santos taught us, you guys? The stem of a tree belongs to the sun. The roots belong to Saturn. The thorns, twigs, and bark of a tree belongs to Mars. The fruit belongs to Jupiter. Flowers belong to Venus. The leaves belong to the moon. And the seed belongs to Mercury.
Country offered to give $1 billion to help Black Americans economically and politically, and the US government denied that gift. A lot of you might already know this story, but it was new information to me, so I'm assuming some people don't know about this history, and it's important that we talk about it. According to LA Times, the federal government of the US denied the Nation of Islam leader Louis Farrakhan permission to accept a promised $1 billion gift from Libya to help Black Americans economically and politically. According to the same report, Farrakhan applied to the Treasury Department's Office of Foreign Assets Control, asking that he be granted an exemption from the sanctions to permit acceptance of $1 billion pledged by Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi during a visit Farrakhan made to Libya. The Treasury Department denied that request in a message to Farrakhan's lawyers in Chicago, asserting the continuing need of the United States to enforce its policy of isolating Libya. Denying $1 billion, which is a gift meant for Black Americans from an African country, is insane. But it did happen, and according to U.S. spokesman then, Glenn Davis, he said, quote, obviously Gaddafi has an interest in gaining a foothold here in the U.S. in some fashion, and of course, that kind of talk is not something that we view positively at all, end quote. So basically, the reasoning the U.S. government gave is that Gaddafi is doing it because he has an interest, and we don't want to allow that, even though this money would have changed people's lives greatly and brought about so much positivity to the Black American community. The US government said no.
Something unbelievable happened for us in the FBI. We were getting lots of rumors about this high-level asset that worked for several intelligence agencies at the same time. He worked for the Saudi intelligence service, he worked for the CIA, and he was being developed as a political asset in Chicago, Illinois. He was not even a United States citizen, but it was said that he was a student visa and that he was a national from another country. In 2008, everyone in the intelligence structure found out who he was. It was this individual, whose name I don't like to say, who became president in 2008 of the United States.
And I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States. The office of President of the United States.
One of his code names was Renegade. His real name was Barry Sortoro, but he adopted a different name for his political career. When they ran him for president, the cabal, basically, this was the culmination of so many of their plans for so many years. His mission was to destroy the United States from within, one institution at a time. One of the things he did, of course, was he defunded our military. He brought down the resources that they got. But then he ordered our military in many, many instances and in various theaters to attack our allies and to defend and supply and help our enemies. That's exactly how he created ISIS. He would say publicly that the military were going to bomb our enemies, but then he would have the military actually bomb enemies of ISIS, our allies. He gave ISIS funding and equipment by basically ordering our military to take equipment into a certain theater and then abandon it. And the commanders would say, that's ridiculous. We'd just be handing that stuff over to ISIS. And the president's office would say, don't question orders, just follow your orders.
Number 44 and the one before that, 43, Bush and Obama. Well, there are pictures of Bush with his arm around 8-year-old Barack Obama because his stepdaddy, adopted daddy, Lolo Sotoro, had done a lifetime worth of business with the Bushes. Uncle George Herbert Walker after whom George Herbert Walker Bush, Bush 1 president, was named, founded Halliburton in 1946 in Oklahoma. And Lolo Sotoro had been international executive vice president for Standard Oil.
There was talk of him being a CIA asset.
Well, yeah, see, he ran the death squads for the Indonesian army. On his own call, anyone could be assassinated. So when George Herbert Walker Bush became head of the CIA under the Ford administration, he just got with his old buddy in the oil business, Lolo Sotoro, and pulled off the hits. See, Barack's grandmother has been acknowledged as being the woman that operated the channels through which CIA money went to the Southwest Pacific. So she introduced her daughter, who had just had Barack, to Lolo Sotoro, and they got married, and Lolo Sotoro adopted Barack Obama. The name was changed to Barry Sotoro. Now, when he went to high school in Hawaii, I know about that high school. I almost sent my oldest son to it. I could afford it, but I didn't think he deserved it. 20 years ago, the tuition was $95,000 a year, not including room and board. When Obama went there, I've talked to two of his classmates. They independently state that the tuition, not including room and board, was $45,000. Now, Business Insider reports his income for 2017 at over $200 million net. That's after taxes, deductions, write-offs. For this last year, 2018, they reported it as $570+ million. And that's after all deductions, tax, right? Trump doesn't make that net.
Get y'all ass in here and sit down. Now, what we got here is two little creatures that was caught on somebody's security cam walking through somebody's driveway. But they up to something. Look at them, shorter than the goddamn tires. And then one of them is getting ready to shoot some sort of light into the sky. See what he did? Now, I think it's some sort of a flare to either call backup in or to let wherever they came from know that they're done doing what they're doing. I'm not sure. I'm just speculating. But what are these things, y'all? They shorter than the fucking tires. These are not kids. Are they gnomes? Are they duendes? I mean, are they elves? What are they? And what is he shooting in the goddamn sky? I don't know. Somebody tell me what they think. Get your ass out.
In the spiritual realm, there are different types of spirits. But one of the most dangerous types people don't talk about are known as familiar spirits. They are evil forces that have latched onto families for so long, sometimes even for generations, causing havoc and destruction in their lives. In this video, I shall be doing a short teaching on familiar spirits, after which we shall be praying a powerful prayer asking God to dislodge them from your life. Keep watching to the end so that you don't miss out on the prayers. So without wasting your time, let's get straight into it. A familiar spirit, in a biblical context, refers to an evil spirit or demon that is believed to assist or serve a witch, medium, or an occult practitioner. The concept of familiar spirits is mentioned several times in the Bible, always in a negative context. God strictly forbade his people from seeking out or consulting with those who had familiar spirits. In Leviticus 19 verse 31, God said, "Regard not them that have familiar spirits, neither seek after wizards, to be defiled by them." In Leviticus 20 verse 6, he also said, "And the soul that turneth after such as have familiar spirits, and after wizards, to go a-whoring after them, I will even set my face against that soul, and will cut him off from among his people." This verse clearly shows that God takes the issue of familiar spirits seriously. He knows the damage they can cause and wants to protect his children from their influence. It is called familiar because of its close association or intimate knowledge between its victim and the person it is serving. The way it works is that it acts as an insider, providing information to whoever assigned it. For example, a witch or a wizard might choose to assign a familiar spirit into a family. That familiar spirit will observe its victim and gather intelligence to report back to the witch. Sometimes they can hide within a family for years, to the extent that they know everything about that family. In fact, not only do they know everything about that family, but they can also mimic the personality and voices, take the shape and form of a diseased...
That will shock you to your core. All of humanity is about to stand in awe at this final moment. And no, I'm not exaggerating, but I'll let you be the judge of that. Did you know that life as you know it right now was manifested in the 40s and in the 30s, even in the 20s, of satanic rituals done in the California desert by some of the biggest names in the world? Walt Disney, L. Ron Hubbard, Jack Parsons, the father of our modern rocket technology, which he got from a weird source, by the way. We'll get into that. And so many more, because the secret is not so secret, even though you don't know what it is. Aleister Crowley, Walt Disney, Jack Parsons, they were all friends. Half of them worked for our own government. But what in the world were they doing? I had to block out a word right here. A word that has to do with intimacy. They were using intimate rituals to do Babylonian workings, to bring forth a moonchild to rule the world. A moonchild conceived of nothing but witchcraft. Literal demons and fallen angels were talking with these people. And they recorded every single word. And this moonchild, he will enter the stage, given power as the chosen one, and he will rule with a hand of liberty. But we'll get back to that. So first off, how was Jack Parsons able to get this technology that none of us ever knew? Well, Jack Parsons learned a whole bunch from Aleister Crowley, who they call the Beast. He was also the first person to come in contact with a Grey that he actually summoned. And all of these different guys were opening portals in the desert. When did the Area 51 thing happen? After they were opening these portals. These Greys have a lot more to do with everything than you really know. And I did tell you that Jack Parsons was working for the US government. Meanwhile, in talks with demons and fallen angels and doing this intimate magic in the middle of the desert. So why were the government's fingers in this? Because the government was awaiting a savior. And their savior looks like a man, but he has a very, very, very old spirit. Like most other visionaries, these people get their information and their technology from divination, higher sources bigger than they are. They go to energetic ley lines, they draw sigils, and they do magic incantations, and they summon devils. The funniest part about it is most of the world thinks that demons and fallen angels don't exist, but the highest up in the government talks to them and they have documented it. And it is really crazy the way it all connects. Like we have Dr. Werner von Braun, a tale of Project Mars, right? Of course, being the L, like the Elon, at Mars. And of course, we have that same guy being at a very high place in this world right now. But this is not about him. But I know you are dying to hear who this moonchild is. So let's get back to the Babylonian working. The moonchild was a thought conceived from the devil himself to Aleister Crowley. And this Babylonian working was basically the final key to get everything to lay out perfectly. The Babylon working, not the moonchild, was a set of rituals taking place from January to March 1946. It was a closing ceremony, if you will, for what was to come and what may be here now. Where they documented how they conjured up these demons and these spirits, what they said, and all of that stuff. And these kings of darkness would literally speak to these people, Jack Parsons and all of them, and they wrote down what they said. Therefore I, the Antichrist, call upon the chosen and the elect upon all men. Come forth now in the name of liberty, that we may be forever, get rid of the tyranny of the Black Brotherhood. Get rid of the tyranny of the Black Brotherhood, what is that? Well, the Antichrist spirit that's talking to him told him already, it's Christianity. What a mighty fine inversion, isn't it? Their entire goal with the moonchild, with everything, was to put an end to Christianity.
Piece of advice to you is, let's take care of our mental and physical health first before we embark upon what is going to be a journey to rebuild these communities back and rebuild them better than they were when we started this fire.
Oh, hold on.
First piece of advice to you is, let's take care of our mental and physical health first before we embark upon what is going to be a journey to rebuild these communities back and rebuild them better than they were when we started this fire.
is a living substance. It's just like water. And red mercury, when you put it in front of a mirror, you won't see the reflection. If you take mercury and you spin it in a circle like this, you create voltage. This is what, when you look at the old world buildings, the cathedrals, they had these orbs up on top of these cathedrals. Those orbs can contain mercury, and they're brass on the outside or gold on the outside. They're iron on the inside, and they got mercury in the center. And what would happen is if a lightning strikes or the bell would ring, you would get a spiral, which would take place, and you got free electricity simply by just a little bit of mercury. Now, mercury in the mouth is a different story. What about red mercury? That's a great one. So red mercury is mercury mixed with iron oxide. Remember, mercury is a living substance. That's what it is. It's just like water. So when you mix mercury with iron, it'll actually put it together. It won't eat it, but it will put it together. And that's where the whole red mercury comes from. And red mercury, when you put it in front of a mirror, you won't see the reflection, which is really fascinating. It's invisible, is what's really cool. Now, if you take mercury and mix it with other metals, it will begin to eat them because it's a living substance.